This podcast is brought to you by XD. Looking to get more from every impression? Meet XD, the outcome-based media platform built for results. Powered by proprietary agentic AI, XD doesn't guess, it knows. By analyzing over 30 real-time data signals across billions of daily impressions, XD predicts and automates what works and eliminates what doesn't. The result? Media campaigns tailored to your KPIs, optimized in real time for performance, efficiency, and scale. Whether you're a marketer chasing ROI or a publisher looking to boost yield, XD's custom-built decisioning models will work for you. XD, predict, perform, repeat. That's EXTE, XD. This podcast is brought to you by Adelaide. Media verification and measurement are undergoing major disruption. Legacy players are pivoting to performance advertising, AI is reshaping brand safety, and attention is replacing viewability. Adelaide is leading this shift with AU, a new way to assess media quality that scores placements based on their potential to drive attention and outcomes before your ads run. Think of it like a credit score for media. Finally, a clear view of quality before you buy. Take the guesswork out of your investment strategy and try Adelaide AU on your next campaign. Welcome to the Marketecture Podcast. This is Ari Paparo. I'm joined today by Eric Franchi. We have a special episode today. We don't have a guest. We're going to talk through the news that came out of Cannes, a post-Cannes wrap-up, and just generally there's a lot going on. So we'll be back with a great guest next week. Eric, so I didn't see you at Cannes.
Yes, I did not go to Cannes. And I managed through the FOMO, I think, quite well. I had a bunch of stuff on the home front that I need to stick around stick around for rather. But I kept myself busy. There was a viral startup that launched while you all were at Cannes called Cluely. Have you looked into Cluely?
You cheated everything, these assholes.
Cheated everything.
Big surprise. A16Z funded them. The most amoral company in Silicon Valley will fund anything.
So that was interesting. Occupied some mind share, but there was a lot of news coming out of Cannes. So let's talk about it. How many times have you been to Cannes, and when did you start going? Yeah, so not as many as you'd think. Probably only 4 or 5, and I took off for a couple for COVID. So I think I started going to Beeswax, small delegation, just like me and a sales dude, plus Katie, who is my head of Europe, who I saw. Shout out to Katie, and it was always very productive. I had a terrible Cannes a couple years back where I had a root canal go bad midway through my flight to Cannes, and I thought I could. It was bad. I thought I could power through and just see the dentist when I got back, and it kept getting worse and worse, and all I could eat was ice cream. And I was like, I got to get back, and I had to emergency flight back to New York. Wow. Okay. Yeah. Well, thankfully that didn't happen again.
I know. I just love telling that story because it's dramatic.
Yeah, that is dramatic. I started going over 10 years ago, right when Cannes started to be taken over by tech. Mm-hmm. And there was, ad tech row of the yachts and everything like that. And I've seen over the decade, everything shift. And now, the walled gardens and the large, hedge gardens, whatever, I think dominate the space. What was the difference from your perspective? And this could be around anything this year versus last year versus maybe when you first started going?
Yeah, I think that the ad tech people have definitely taken over. Every piece of signage on the Crusade, most of the yachts, most of the booths are ad tech adjacent at least. You do have folks who are just selling ads like, Spotify Beach and consultants and things like that. But it's pretty firmly a mixed conference where you have the folks who pay for the tickets and get the awards are largely agency people. And then the folks who are spending the money are largely ad tech people. It's a nice coexistence, I guess. Someone has to buy the drinks.
Who from ad tech was very visible? Who do you think won in terms of mind share, creative marketing, just, who's on your mind post-Cannes for ad tech?
I think it's interesting that Google increasingly just talks about YouTube. It was really YouTube Beach, not Google Beach. Neil Mohan and creators and all of that. That was the highlight of it comes from Google's bank account, but they're really pushing YouTube.
Yeah, we'll get to that in a sec. Okay, that's an interesting observation. What else?
Spotify had a big presence. I think Stagwell had a sports speech that was very popular. I didn't go there, but it seemed like that was a big deal. You had competing consultancies with MediaLink and 3CV, two beaches next to each other. Also, I think you saw a lot of the CTV people. I had a chance to pop by the LG suite, but they weren't the only ones. Netflix had a suite. Pretty much everyone in the CTV world was there in some form, although not as big. Like, you didn't see, other than Freewheel Comcast, you didn't see like a major expenditure from the TV people. They were more tactical, more bringing 5 or 6 people and, getting their message across and taking meetings.
From the cheap seats here across the world, one of the things that I thought was interesting, and I want to know if they've resonated as much in person versus online, was the Viant out-of-home ad or the Viant outdoor ad. So they had an ad, and did you see it? I hope you saw it.
I don't think I saw it.
Get out of here. So, and Adam, maybe this is a location thing, and this is just the power of social media. They had an outdoor ad that seemingly was like right, positioned by the Palais, that had an image of a typewriter with the question, still trading on a desk.
Mm.
And then, the other side of it was Viant AI, future of digital advertising. So a nod to their, I think, positioning that they view, DSPs as being autonomous in the future. And certainly like a shot across the bow at TTD.
Yeah. So as a marketer, I always want to know how the budgets and how these activations take place. So I asked some questions. And what I found out was, first of all, the dollar amounts you have to pay to get a spot in one of the hotels is just astounding, right? It's astounding. I talked to someone who basically had like a couple of couches and a little hallway in a major hotel, and they said it was $500,000. And what's interesting, and I didn't know this, is that when you do that, you also get bundled into the package signage on the main road. And you have to. They're combined. Like, you can't, and it's the opposite. You can't do signage on the main road. You can't just like find some random cafe and say, we're going to put up our sign here. It's all controlled by the Lions people. So the signage and the space go together for a really big dollar amount. And also, even if you have like a hotel room up on the 3rd floor of one of these hotels and want to throw a banner out your window, you have to get it approved officially by the city council. So there's some French bureaucrat who's saying none to the ad tech people, who, when they get a little too obnoxious with their signage. The other thing I noticed is like, and this is kind of funny from my perspective, running not Beeswax. What's the name of my company? Marketecture. Yeah. Our small, we're a small company. So it's basically we've reproduced medieval feudalism, because Cannes Lion is the king. Like, they own everything. They are the Roy of the French Riviera. And then they sell like a parcel to a nobleman like Adweek, who's a partner of ours. So Adweek spends a lot of money, and they have the Adweek house, and that's great for them. And then they have to have a level down in the feudalism. So they give Viant a little, half of their space is all branded Viant, and Viant has meeting rooms in the Adweek house, which is from the hotel, which is from Lion. And then AdTech God needs a space. So we partner with Adweek to have a party in the Viant space, in Adweek, in Lions. And then we sell sponsorships to our party. So that's how the money flows.
It's like a series of subleases almost.
It's a series. It's like, yeah, it's basically I'm the sharecropper,
licensing,
and I'm waking up in the morning and hoeing my land and trying to eke out some barley.
Wow. I do remember, the few years we went big at Undertone. This is a decade ago, going through all that. Like that's how things go there. But it was nowhere near $500,000. So it has kept pace or outpaced inflation.
That's like the entry level for a yacht is like, because it's maybe like 300 for the yacht and another a couple hundred for food and bev.
All right. Let's talk about big themes. So we had 3 here. We'll go through them. So first is AI. Second, I think, sports creators, kind of put them together. And the third was RMNs, commerce media, maybe non-publisher media. Let's talk about AI first. So a year ago, speaking of Viant, we saw like the first big AI launch, which was Viant AI. And then there wasn't a lot. And then all of a sudden, over the course of the past quarter or so, everybody's got an AI story. So was AI just the dominant theme in conversation and content?
Yeah, absolutely. It was the dominant theme. The common joke was next year we're just going to send our agents here instead of wasting the plane trip.
The CFO in me likes that.
Yeah, exactly. It certainly is a top thought for everyone, but mixture of fear and opportunity. Everyone is talking about it. Everyone's excited about it. I will say, from my experience talking to the ad tech vendor community, which is kind of like my bread and butter, I'm not very impressed. I don't see that many I don't see that many products have shipped. I don't see people using in production. I put this on Twitter. It's like everyone loves to talk about Brian O'Kelly and Scope 3 and how he's like hyping so much. He's crazily hyping his stuff. But you know what? He's in production and a lot of people are not. So let's see some shipping. Let's see some features that people actually use.
That's interesting. It's so interesting. Joe Zawadzki came back and, he had his perspective was, and maybe this was just everybody thinking more about opportunity rather than production. He's like, there's a sense of real optimism because of what AI represents in terms of a resetting, right? It's been a decade of Google and Meta basically eating everything, right? And then, the open web has whatever its share and ad tech has its share. But, it's a little bit of like optimism that the future is up for grabs, which maybe tracks to what you're saying, which is it's excitement, but you got to ship.
Yeah, I do think it is up for grabs a little bit. That we've been in a fairly static competitive situation in most of the sectors that matter. And for a while, we all thought cookie deprecation was going to be the reset, that we would have a new generation of tech that would be, privacy safe pets and stuff. And that turned out to, not be as big a revolution as anyone thought. And now we have a new opportunity to rethink the way we offer our clients products and could really change who competes with whom. I have some ideas I'm trying to work through for my newsletter about this, does AI make curation more valuable is kind of a thinking I've been kind of working through. But I guess I'll stand by my point. Like, who shipped? Like, can you log in, name your favorite DSP? Can you log in and have a radically different experience because of AI than you did a year ago?
It's a good question. I'm not hands-on keyboard, so I can't come up with anything.
The answer is no. The answer is no. The answer is no.
Yeah. Right, fine. That said, we're seeing things, right? So TTD had their 10 days of announcements or 10 announcements. They had some pretty interesting announcements that were around AI, right? So they're building out their Gen AI creative marketplace. They've got companies like Rembrandt, a portfolio company that are, just trying to reimagine creative with AI. They've got, some interesting sort of like kind of data things happening. So people are pushing forward, but there hasn't been yet the wholesale change that I think I'm waiting for.
This is a little bit off topic. I put it in the notes, but it's a little off topic. But did you see the Gorilla Dentist ad?
Yeah.
Veo, the video platform from Google, is astoundingly good, right? It's the first time that you can create videos that can fool the average person into thinking they're real. And so there's this meme. It creates these really funny videos with this gorilla who does a lot of drugs. It's very, very funny. It's like kind of taking over TikTok and Reels, this gorilla thing. So, but it's not a copyrighted character. You just tell Veo to have a drug-addled gorilla. So a dentist created a commercial of this gorilla getting really high, jumping out of a plane and breaking his teeth, and then going to the dentist and getting implants. And it's a real dentist and a real ad, and it's better. It's $1 million ad easily. If you were to ask an agency, and it's probably the best local dentist ad in the history of the internet. It is really cool. It is hysterically funny, like really laugh out loud funny. It just makes me wonder, and I've been skeptical on this pod from the start about AI creative companies, is that like, I feel like the underlying tech is so powerful that you may not need vendors. Like we may be skipping a step in this whole process. And AI is more like the invention of the PC than it is the invention of the spreadsheet.
It's fascinating. Stephen Liss from OpenAds had this post, and he had a good image in his post as well. It might have been with Veo or something like that, of a yacht like sinking, But his view is that, as AI kind of, blends media and creative, future creative roles need to be technical. Like you need to be able to make VO3 do that. And then conversely, technical roles, you need to be able to meet creative in the middle. So it's an interesting resetting, and it's a skill set that, to your point, like needs to be created.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. And also, creatives have always been somewhat technical. If you've ever tried to jump into Photoshop and make it work for you, I mean, there's a pretty high skill level in the creative professions and always has been. This is different. And I think that the tools remain somewhat immature. So it'll be very interesting to see how they do that.
Yeah, exciting. Okay, so AI, not enough shipping. But the potential is ridiculous.
Yeah, I wrote about it in my newsletter this week that I'm surprisingly impressed by the amount of shipping going on among agencies. We don't know as non-users how impactful what their shipping is, but they're shipping. So you have MIQ's major Sigma announcement we covered 2 weeks ago, and they were on a panel that I moderated. Also, IPG has a new product out
with Snowflake.
They have an AI sort of, I don't even know what it is, like a media planning kind of thing, but they shipped it into the Snowflake cloud so that brands can use it without moving their data, which is a really interesting idea of like, can you bring the agency's intelligence to the cloud instead of the client's data to the agency? And then PMG has an AI instance called Ali. PMG is like this very tech enabled. They don't even want to be called an agency, but they are like a tech enabled agency that bought Camelot. They released this thing called the Ali Marketplace, which is again like it's agency workflow around media buying and planning, but now that they are allowing third-party vendors to kind of instantly insert themselves into the client's workflow and data. You know, this is just a step more interesting than historically what we've seen from agencies, which is effectively like white labeling technology from other people.
Yeah, love to see it. Have you gotten a demo of Ali?
I haven't. I would love to get that.
Yeah, I did, and we'll put the link to the announcement. There's some screenshots that shows it. It is it's quite impressive.
Right. What is the core functionality? Is it media planning primarily or execution?
It's both.
Mm-hmm.
It's end to end. Think of, I think they launched it with something like 30 vendors, 25 leading partners, including Amazon, Attain, Disney, Experian, NBC Universal, Samsung Ads, Inside Campaign Workflow. So it's like end to end. If you think about those names, they're everything from planning to media to execution to optimization. Yeah.
So it makes a lot of sense. If you're going to use AI to automate things, you have to, part of that is pushing the tool into the client's hands. Because if you're just automating internally your agency and still shipping spreadsheets and PowerPoints to the client, there's going to be a limit to how much benefit there's going to be. This podcast is brought to you by AudioHook, the leading independent audio DSP. AudioHook has direct publisher integrations into all major podcast and streaming radio platforms, providing 40% more inventory than what could be accessed in omnichannel DSPs. What's more, AudioBook has full transcripts on more than 90% of all podcast inventory, enabling advanced contextual targeting and brand suitability. AudioHook is so confident that in addition to CPM buys, they offer the industry's only pay-for-performance option where brands can scale audio and podcasting with peace of mind knowing they are only paying for outcomes. Visit audiohook.com to learn more. That's audiohook.com.
Okay, cool. Let's move on to number 2, sports and creators. Again, from the cheap seats, so much of the content that, was discussed was at Stagwell Sport Beach, which seemingly was like the place to be. You had Serena Williams, the Kelsey brothers, like all sorts of celebrities there. And a lot of the conversations were around sports and sports sponsorship and sports monetization. There was actually some ad tech announcements that were about sports. So 2 of TTD's announcements were about how they were doing integrations to allow for buying during live sports. So really feels like this is becoming elevated and more of a part of, the space than it's been, and where there's probably some areas for innovation around ad tech. Was there a lot of discussion there, or was just that was not part of the ad tech rigmarole?
Yeah, there was a lot of presence of creators. I think Forbes announced, or was it Fortune? I think Forbes announced their like creator top 100 listing. They had a big party. The YouTube presence was heavily focused on creators.
So this is sports and creators.
Sports and creators.
So you're kind of putting this all
put together. Yeah. The angle for sports specifically, obviously, is like so much of TV viewership is sports, and that has been moving to digital and to programmatic But those are kind of different steps. Moving to digital first, but still serving ads in kind of the traditional way, and then moving to programmatic, where there are a lot of complexities that I know the IB and other folks have been trying to kind of get their arms around to help make it programmatic enabled without having the same ad show 70 times in a row and stuff like that. Is kind of difficult technically. But definitely creators were top of the list of important things. I was standing online for the Spotify party, and I was on the press line, which was exciting. If anyone wants to treat me as press and give me free stuff, I did not go to journalism school, so I don't know what the ethical rules are. I'll just take it. So anyway, so I was standing online to go to see Cardi B at Spotify. And the guy in front of me was a younger fellow who, just doing his thing, checking his phone. And some girls across the way were like, "Hey, man, who's playing?" And he's like, "Cardi B." And then the girls, after he said Cardi B, they freaked out and started yelling and being like, "Oh, my God, you know who he is? You know who he is?" And I had no idea. It's some random dude. And the other girl's like, "No, who is he?" And he just says, like, "Look me up, baby." and then the first girl says, "He's the guy with the spatula." And I'm like, this is ridiculous. Like, I mean, he looks like a cool dude and everything, young, good looking guy. But like, he's the dude with the spatula, and they had that made their can that they ran into the dude with the spatula, and they didn't know I was the ad tech influencer. There was no one screaming for me, or there might have been actually. Steve Kettleman might have been, but no one of note.
This is ridiculous. I did a quick search for the guy with the spatula.
I wasn't able to locate either. I wasn't able to locate him either. Yeah.
So Lou Pascalis had actually a really good wrap up in Ad Exchanger. We should link to it. He pointed out just the impact of creators, right? So the Social and Influencer Lions Award is now called the Social and Creator Lion, and the predictions around growth are wild. So the creator economy will become a $500 billion business on CAGR of 25% by 2030. This seems to be, so obviously this is why YouTube is all in, because they're just like running away with this space. But also it's an area that I've been trying to dive into, because it's like, this is the future of media. And some of the problems that we've seen in terms of fragmentation and measurement and workflow with the previous open web, it seems to be the same in the creator space. So I do wonder if we start to see like more of a light on tech tools for creators and the creative space, just because of the market size and the obvious problems.
On the other hand, the creators express themselves largely within walled gardens. So between YouTube and TikTok and Instagram, those are the three major sources of creator income, which makes it very difficult for everybody involved, because those are closed platforms. They're not going to let a lot of tech into the gardens. I also have a little bit of a contrarian take, which is the creator economy is very vulnerable to AI. I mentioned earlier these guerrilla videos. If you spend any time on TikTok, it's getting overwhelmed by high quality AI generated content very quickly. Like it's probably a very underreported story how much AI is going on TikTok right now. And it's not slop, it's like quality. And I just wonder how much of what creators currently do is going to be AI'd.
I will take the other side of that.
Okay.
Because I think for the reason you just said, there's an unlimited amount of AI slop, which is going to get better, which is going to get highly personalized, which is going to, be trained for your taste versus my taste. Authenticity and real people, and the complete other side of that becomes that much more valuable. What this means in terms of market opportunity and money and all that stuff, I'm not sure, but I do think the other side of that remains like a real opportunity.
All right, I'm going to make a tortured analogy, if I may. Tell me if this makes any sense. In my life, we've gone from, rock bands with 5 or 6 friends creating music to, one of the trends is there are no bands in the top 100 songs ever anymore. Like every single artist is a single. So that's the creator economy. And then you look at the EDM world, which I'm not a big fan of, but, people love EDM, and the DJs are anonymous. They're wearing headgear. No one knows who they are. And they can be replaced at any time. They're characters. I think that's my tortured analogy.
Okay. All right. So you are like Ready Player One, Matrix. We're just plugged in and machines are feeding us.
Look, it's gonna happen to OnlyFans. That's why they're trying to sell. Like OnlyFans, sexual content.
I've never heard of it.
Of course not. Sexual content's going to be replaced by AI in our lifetimes.
Jeez. Okay. Let's come back to commerce media.
Let's do it.
So who do you recall just, making big investments, just like a location perspective, from a marketing perspective?
Yeah, that's always the vibe. How much did they spend on their yacht and things like that? I think PayPal's making a big move. We had Dr. Mark on the podcast. They're just constantly doing stuff, having events, trying to get people involved, raise their profile.
The shoppable ads that he hinted. They came out. They look good.
Yeah. I haven't seen them. Oh, okay, I'll check it out.
I put the link in the docket. We could put it on the newsletter. They look good.
The biggest news, which we'll cover in a second, is Amazon Roku. That was the one news report that broke through the clutter. But I don't know if I saw that much commerce. Like, everyone was there, everyone was talking, but it wasn't. I don't think anyone had an enormous physical presence.
That said, the announcements around commerce media, I agree, were some of the most interesting. I had another one that maybe was a little bit less impactful and big as Amazon Roku, but we should talk about both. So Amazon Roku, why is this interesting and matter?
So Amazon and Roku, they kicked off the week with their announcement, and they positioned, it was a little hard to parse it out, but they positioned it as the largest reach video CTV network. What it is specifically, Roku is an active seller of ads, right? They sell the ads themselves. They facilitate the ad sales on the apps on the Roku device. Roku is the most popular CTV platform. So that's the baseline. And Roku has multiple buying platforms because they acquired DataZoo, and they have a self-service platform, and they also allow people to buy through the Trade Desk. Okay, that's the baseline. So what they announced more or less is just that the Amazon DSP can buy on the Roku devices with a unified ID, which makes the Amazon DSP arguably the strongest player in CTV because they can access all of Amazon's walled garden stuff on the Fire TV and all the other Amazon stuff, plus all the Roku inventory with the same ID. And I think they gave 68% as their estimate of the audience they could reach. And there's some caveats here. So the Trade Desk and Roku have a partnership that does involve UID too. So the Trade Desk also has ID resolution on Roku devices. And there was some question. I talked to Dave Clark, the former CEO of Freewheel, about this. And he thinks that the real interesting thing is that Amazon's getting insight into the ID within apps on Roku devices. So if you're like CBS and you have the CBS app on Roku devices, it's sort of up to you whether you use UID2 or not. And Roku has always had ID resolution within the CBS app, and now they're giving that to Amazon as well. Overall, I would just say it's a real big coup for the Amazon DSP.
We had Jay Ashkenazi on shortly after he took the job at Roku, and he talked about their plan to go from basically being closed to open to doing big partnerships. So this is like the ultimate manifestation of that. YouTube is still number one from a reach perspective, from a time spent perspective, but they don't have Amazon shopping data. So This is a very interesting, big competitor to that.
Yeah. And if the DV360, historically, the number one advantage has been YouTube access, still has that exclusively. But the Amazon DSP has Amazon access and Roku access. So this is a real heavyweight fight going on here.
Yeah, for sure. The other one I thought was interesting, and again, not as big, clearly, was Comcast. So Comcast partners with they had an announcement with a couple of companies, but within this announcement, the lead was they partnered with MasterCard to link TV exposure to purchase behavior around this whole universal ads thing that the James Barrow and the guys are doing. I think that's super interesting because, it's like they're going the SMB mid-market route, and you need to show proof of ROI to keep those advertisers spending. Like we've talked about a bunch of times with these types of companies, is a really smart deal.
Yeah, we talked about this specifically with Mountain when they went public. Then Mountain claimed some sort of special sauce around attribution, but really it's just IP address. They're saying, here's the IP address of the TV and here's the IP address of the website. Someone bought something. And when you're going after these small advertisers, especially local, they may not have a website that people go to. People may go to, DoorDash to buy something. And so the MasterCard link to be able to say, like, we know that someone went to your restaurant, or at least, and then you can project it out to the population of non-MasterCard users. It's really powerful for a local regional advertising offering.
Yeah, well done. So it's so interesting. We're talking about commerce media, but we've actually been talking about CTV the whole time. So these are coming together really nicely.
Yeah, they do seem to overlap a lot.
Hey, before we break, half of the reason why people go to Cannes is to run into people, have those conversations, whether it's in between meetings or well into the evening. Anything interesting in terms of a vibe, a rumor, like something that, you left kind of, thinking about that you might want to articulate here for the listener?
I think some of the topics that we talk about or that are top of mind about, like, is AppLovin for real? Is Mountain for real? How much fraud is there in the world? Like, I heard a lot of that stuff off the record. People. You're just setting the agenda, Ari. That's all you're doing. People it's a circle. People read my newsletter and then they come to me and tell me that I was right or that they knew it all along. So definitely. But definitely there are haters out there, and they may be justified haters, but there are definitely haters out there. So people like buttonhole me and tell me about that. The other thing is people just coming up to me and telling me about their random agentic startup. Then I'm like, yeah, dude, sure, send me a deck, which is probably happens to you, Eric. You luckily weren't there, so you don't have people constantly, trying to pitch you on giving them money, right?
Yeah, the team was there, so I have a full inbox either way. Any, sense of whether M&A might pick up in the second half?
I didn't really get a sense for that. That wasn't top of mind for me. I predict it will. I think this AI thing can potentially shuffle the deck in ways that if you are a company that's flat-footed on it, that doesn't really have an offering, and competitors start showing stuff, you might very quickly want to reorganize your offering, buy things, sell things, move things around.
That makes a ton of sense. All right, awesome. Well, that's Cannes 25, the wrap. I'll see you at Cannes 26, buddy.
Yeah, we'll see.
You might be sending me to Cannes 26.
Next year, we'll do the opposite.
The man on the ground.
All right. So that's a wrap. If some housekeeping other things. So this week's Marketecture vendor interview, which came out on Monday, was really interesting. It was with Acast, which is a podcast ad network. They have kind of this sort of similar to the influencer thing where a lot of advertisers want to find hosts and get host-read ads. So they created a marketplace where you can, propose copy and do all that. So it's a pretty interesting interview, I think. Also, if you're it's a cool company. If you're catching up on this podcast, I'd recommend listening to the 4 podcasts we launched last week, all of which were short, 10, 15-minute interviews with interesting people from Cannes. And, that was pretty interesting, especially I think the Oleg Kornfeld one where he tells us kind of the pros and cons of building AI in an agency and what sort of challenges that went through. And other than that, we'll be back next week with some interesting guests.
All right. Until then, we'll see you next week, everybody.
Yep. Thanks for listening.
Thank you for subscribing to Marketecture. New interviews are added every week at marketecture.tv and your favorite podcasting app.
Thank you for listening to the Marketecture podcast. New episodes come out every Friday, and an insightful vendor interview is published each Monday. You can subscribe to our library of hundreds of executive interviews at marketecture.tv. You can also sign up for free for our weekly newsletter with my original strategic insights on the week's news at news.marketecture.tv. And if you're feeling social, we operate a vibrant Slack community that you can apply to join at adtechgod.com.